The true pinnacle of my rock bottom is actually the story of how I opened my first book, B, where I was at home in my apartment in Chicago. I had like a negative $117 in my bank account. We were in $75,000 worth of credit card debt. I had no money in the pipeline. I had no money in business or checking. And I kept getting these notices from AT&T that they were going to shut off my phone because I couldn't afford my phone bill. It was like $250, $300. It was overdue. My parents lived 45 minutes north, and I got in my car and I drove to my parents' house on a Sunday morning. They had no idea that their daughter was going through any of this. And I asked them to help me. I'm like getting emotional thinking about it. And my mom and my dad, they were like confused. You know, they weren't mad. They weren't disappointed. They didn't understand. I remember getting in my car and driving back home. This is a true story. I don't go into this much detail in the book. I kind of do. But I was driving on the 90-94 highway home. Literally had nothing. I felt like I was nothing. And I just started getting this download like, what do you have? What are you grateful for that you have in your life? And I just started speaking to God in my car. Like, okay, I have a roof over my head when I go home. My dogs will be waiting for me and they're going to be happy to see me. I'm grateful for that. I love writing with blue pens more than I like writing with black pens. And I own a lot of blue pens. I'm grateful for my blue pens. Yeah. My brother called me yesterday. My brother never calls me. I'm so grateful that my brother called me. And I just started sharing all of the gratitude for the abundance that I did have in my life. And like, that was right around the time I left Cheeky. I got picked up by my bootstraps by a friend who was a mentor who gave me a $5,000 monthly contract to consult with her on a brand she needed help with. And my financial picture started to turn around as I sort of figured out what I was going to do with my next chapter of my career, which was ultimately Simply Be, that scaled very quickly to a very successful business. But it started in that moment of reframing what worthiness and what wealth and abundance really felt like, because I literally had nowhere to go but up from that moment. So the gratitude game is so real.
Yeah. And the gift of desperation,
yes,
is a true gift.
It totally is.
And there's somebody out there right now who is hearing this and they're like, wait, that's where I am.
Yeah.
You're always told like, just hang on because after the darkness comes the light. And you're like, but when? Is this going to be forever for me? What was it that kept you going through that? Because so you got help from a mentor.
I did.
And were you able to forecast that things are going to turn around? Like, I think it's very easy to get sucked into the mire of hopelessness.
Absolutely. You know, at that point when I left the company Cheeky, my parents gave me like a couple $100 to pay that phone bill. And then I literally got a call the following week from that mentor because I started practicing gratitude literally every day for like it took 1 week. That's how fast the universe, I believe, responds once you've decided and you really get into alignment and you put your heart into your practice. And that mentor ended up offering me a full-time job, and I took a corporate birdwalk for 2 years and paid off that debt. And my husband was going through a job dissolution at the time, so I was sort of the breadwinner. I remember leaving that company to go start Simply Be and feeling like this would be a leap to start a second company again after failing my first, and knowing that the net would catch me. And it was right around this exact pivot point because I hated that job, you know? So the folks that are listening that are still in the mire, like I stayed in the mire just in a different kind of way for 2 years. It was definitely golden handcuffs. I went on a women's retreat about 3 or 4 months before I quit that job. It was up in the woods of Wisconsin. I'm from Chicago, so I just had to drive up an hour and a half. It was $700. It was some of the best $700 I've ever spent. It was with a random transformational coaching company. And it was kind of a crazy retreat. They made us do some really wild personal development things that stretched us. But the takeaway, the end of that retreat, it was 2 days, was the biggest unlock I've ever had that really started my Simply Be, why I'm actually probably sitting here talking to you. And that was that I am radically responsible for my entire life. That was such a revelatory understanding that I'm not a victim to anything. It's all up to me. the good and the bad. I was pointing fingers. Like I often say point one finger at one, you've got three pointing back at you. Like I blamed my husband for his fear for not wanting me to quit that corporate job. I blamed American Airlines for my misery because I traveled so much and flights were never on time. I hated my boss that was looming over me, keeping me stuck in that corporate job. There was another potential opportunity that I wanted to maybe go work for and they couldn't fundraise and I was mad at them. And I was like, Jessica, your life is up to you, babe. You're in the driver's seat. And so even in the dark, which I have been through a lot, it's the whole foundation of my new book, I always came home to that truth that it wasn't happening to me. It was all happening for me. And if we can drop into that knowing even in the midst of it, especially when we're in the midst of it, I think that's really where the empowerment comes.
I had to take a breath into that. It's such a light worker way to describe it too. I usually just say it's easy to be grateful for the good things, but you have to learn to lean into the suck.
Yes.
You just have to learn to love the suck because there's a lesson in there. Now, it doesn't feel great to be told, just find a lesson. It's the most obnoxious thing to be told. Yeah. So you have to really kind of come to that on your own. Yes. It's not something someone else can tell you to do before you're ready. But it sounds like because you had the gift of desperation, you were ready. Yeah. And I had read that you were meditating, I would imagine, at this retreat and that you have a tattoo?
Yeah. So I have a tattoo, Simply Be. I love that you did your homework. This was right around actually the pivot point of which I left Cheeky, back to those party days where I was, living my best life. I wasn't. I was drinking. I was sick. I was stressed. I had all of this inflammation in my body. I started getting chronic sinus infections. I had to have surgery on my sinuses. That was the culmination of my rock bottom. I was financially broke, mentally not well, and physically really sick. And I wanted to go back to Cheeky. I wanted to go back to my hustle right away. My body was healing. It was like, no, girl, you're going to stay in bed and rest for 2 months. And I had somewhat of a nervous breakdown sitting with myself in that moment. And I got out of the house one day. I had to get some fresh air, went to a park, dropped into a meditation, and I looked at this tattoo that has been on my wrist since my early 20s. And I heard a higher voice, my highest self say to me, you need to change your life. You need to stop pretending to be the cheeky girl. That's not you. And learn how to simply be. And when you do that, your whole life will change. So I got the idea to launch the company as an idea. Then I got swooped into corporate America. I say that Simply Be, the business and the idea, sat on a shelf for 2 years and looked at me. And then I went to that retreat and I got the courage because I was so freaking miserable. I'm going to take it off the shelf and I'm going to really do this thing called Simply Be Agency. I leaped and the net caught me for sure.
So walk us through that, because I know that has been a ride and there's an exciting end to that story.
Yeah.
So if there's somebody right now that's just there's everybody right now that just has a dream.
Yeah.
We all have something right now, something that's confounding us, something that's a secret, something that's a dream that we don't really believe we could do.
Yeah.
So if it's that latter person and they're listening and they're like, yeah, but how did that happen? How did that roll out? And tell us. It's always nice to hear a success story. Tell us what became of it.
Yeah. Well, I'll first say to that person listening is nobody is going to believe in you unless you believe in yourself hard. Yeah. Because people feel that. People resonate and respond to that. And when I was ready to quit that corporate job and launch Simply Be, I believed in Simply Be, the brand. It was all about the brand, what it stood for, what it meant in the world. It wasn't just going to do personal branding for executives, which is what it became, but it was about humanity and authenticity, unapologetic, showing up in the world online in service of your community, your company, your industry. Jamie, I had 2 retainers before I quit my corporate job. My husband was freaking out. I had a 6-figure salary with bonus and a credit card, corporate expense and benefits. He's like, you're going to go do this again? You buried us the first time. I had 2 clients. They were each paying me about $1,500 a month in retainer. So I had $3,000 in retainer, and that covered my rent and groceries and bills, but barely. I was, living in a big city of Chicago. But I just doubled down on the brand, which was me, which I was the spokesperson for. $3,000 a month became $10,000 a month, became $40,000 a month very, very quickly. And I hit 7 figures in revenue in less than 18 months. And I look back because I really didn't have too much of a model and a strategy, and I did have a website. I had services. I was basically consulting high level consulting. And then my clients kept asking me to execute on certain things. So I hired freelancers, and those freelancers became full-time employees. And all of a sudden we were a full service agency. I really went deep on this concept of authenticity that everybody seemed to resonate with. I got really lucky by hiring a few really incredible people right away. And those people were with me for 7 years. Something just got into alignment really fast with Simply Be the brand. And our clients were seeing results, and I was building a really beautiful culture. I loved becoming a leader and a CEO of a company. And then I got an idea to write a book, and I did. And it was huge, and it doubled my business in a year.